Hello, everyone, and welcome to our July edition of the Microsoft Teams news show. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today, and I'm joined once again by Tom Arbuthnot from Empowering.Cloud, along with our panel of experts from around the Microsoft Teams ecosystem. So it's great to have you here. Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, it's ramped down for events now. So I had the last big event, so there's a couple of months now that are a bit more chilled event-wise. But new Microsoft financial year as well, so lots coming on in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like it's settling down a little bit. It's going to give us some time off, thank goodness. But it is Microsoft's new year, and I suppose they've got a whole bunch of new priorities, and we've got some layoffs. So I don't know where you want to start there, Tom. Do you want to start with
I think we should definitely talk about the layoffs. So that's a substantial number. So it was another, I think, reportedly 9,000 people. Now, obviously, Microsoft are a huge organization, so percentage-wise, that's still a small percentage, but significant numbers, and obviously, real people impacted. I've got friends who have got caught up in that wave as well. So it's across the company. A lot of impact on gaming. Gaming seems to have got really hit hard. I think Microsoft are looking at gaming carefully and saying, is it a long-term profitable business / what does it look like in the cloud? But this has gone wider than that. It's gone across the whole organization. So sorry to anybody who's been obviously wrapped up in that. And it just shows Microsoft is being, even though they're highly profitable at the moment, they are super focused on not being kind of giving any mercy as far as roles go. They're being really kind of quite aggressive about it, and changing roles as well, which is often what they do at this time of year. They will remove roles and add different roles that they want for the coming FY priorities. So some of those people hopefully will find different roles inside of Microsoft as well.
Yeah, we hope so too. But let's talk about some of their priorities then, because are things changing? What's happening?
Yeah, so we won't know officially until July the 22nd, which is their kind of partner kickoff. So that's when they do multiple sessions talking about kind of marching orders of the year, what the priorities are, what they want partners doing. But I don't think it takes a genius to work out that it is very, very focused on AI and Copilot. Like that has been and will continue to be the overarching thing. A lot of focus on agents and agentic and getting organizations to use that. So you'll see Microsoft pushing the partner community to be talking about that, to be doing agentic workshops, to be getting into customers talking about that. In our space, that means AI in Teams, it means premium, it still means phone, potentially rooms, but all with an AI slant on the conversation, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Well, exciting stuff as well. But it is 1 year since they launched their contact center product, contact center solution. And we talk about it every year in predictions that it's going to be the year for contact center. Is it the year of contact center in 2025? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's the second kind of shot of Microsoft Contact Center, D365 Contact Center. There continues to be big momentum. There's a lot planned for this financial year as well. I'm still not seeing like tons and tons of referenceability. I think it's still a big, complex deployment. But I am talking to partners who are starting to do deployments now, which was different to 6 months ago. So it seems to be getting some traction.
It does take time, of course, these things, especially when they're so complex. But I can imagine that momentum is building. We are hearing more and more about it. But equally, we're seeing a lot of success in the vendor ecosystem, aren't we?
Yeah, the ecosystem is really strong at the moment, and the Teams phone extensibility and the Unify and the Azure communication services, that is really the big conversation I'm having with lots of partners and customers at the moment, is the new abilities that Teams certified contact centers get that is the same platform as Dynamics 365 contact centers. So I think the two things will push each other for sure over this FY.
Well, and I think that's what I was going to say, is that I think Dynamics is a proof point for Microsoft, and really where we're seeing the growth is in the ecosystem, the third-party contact centers. Dynamics as a contact center reminds me a little bit of the Tanjay phone. It was just to prove that we could create a phone. It was never, going to be the only choice. And I think there's lots of great extend and unify, kind of contact centers from third parties right now that have a lot of traction.
The AI elements, which I think in terms of the story that customers are getting really excited about with a first-party contact center is I think just starting to unfold around kind of the way AI will be leveraged inside, and that I guess to the extent there's going to be significant differentiation and a position that Microsoft can come from on the first-party side, it's going to be around kind of creative use of Copilot and AI inside this contact center solution.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And moving on, then, I mean, we have seen other successes with Microsoft and Copilot recently. Barclays Bank, Tom, you know Barclays Bank, it's a local bank. They've just deployed 100,000 Teams users. Is that correct?
Copilot, M365 Copilot licenses.
Sorry,
they were already a Team shop. So this is a huge number. So they did a 15,000 user pilot, and now they're rolling it out across everybody in the bank, which we don't know what price they paid. I imagine there might have been some deal at the end of the FY, but regardless, 100,000 users, even if they got a bit of a discount, it's still a massive financial commitment and a strategy commitment to be using M365 Copilot across the board. So I've seen various other customers step up as well, not as big as that. Like they've gone from like 1,000 to 4,000 or 1,000 to 5,000. So interesting to see such a big proof point for someone willing to invest that much money in M365 Copilot.
What kind of pain do you think you're going through right now, deploying 100,000 users, pretty much at the same time? I mean, what kind of, dynamics do you get at that when you're trying to, implement it at that scale?
Yeah, it's the adoption that's the challenge, I think, in driving value out of it. So I mean, if they deploy it to everybody and they don't use it, there's no negative pain in that sense because you're not swapping out. It's not like when you move from IP phones to Skype or Teams and you had to help them understand to do their job. It's the opportunity cost of getting people to use it. I think I'm seeing financial and legal are hyper aware AI is going to disrupt their spaces. Like they are knowledge worker, information moving machines, right? So they're aware. So I think there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of knowledge workers who are, being pushed to say, like, you should be more productive with these tools. You have to learn these tools. So I imagine in an organization like that, that's, financial and very focused, there'll be a lot of work on driving the value of that investment.
I can imagine a compliance team are all over that as well, aren't they? With AI being deployed to that many users, compliance is a major issue, especially in banks. What do you think?
Yeah, this is one of the things where Microsoft has this advantage of we are already a trusted partner. We already hold your data, we hold your email, we hold your Teams, we process it in the same types of ways. So I'm 100% sure there were some massive conversations, but you're not onboarding a new supplier in this scenario. You're sharing more data with an existing supplier you trust from a data point of view.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Well, let's move on then. So also there's another story Kristian picked out was that Teams Classic is officially dead in the water. Microsoft have pulled the plug. Tom, is anyone missing Teams Classic? What do you think?
Yeah, no, most people should be cut over by now. It automatically updated. So the vast majority of users are already over. This is just really a warning that now that old client is end of support and Microsoft will start to banner and then cut off users running that old client. So they've provided in the Message Center some scripts to help you move people proactively. The only people that will be left have been somehow blocked by a proxy from updating or they're stuck on an old version. So just a heads up, if you're an IT administrator or a service owner, just double check, and we'll talk later in the show. Microsoft are doing a lot of work for IT admins in terms of reporting to help them understand their client estate and versions. So there's some good resources to help you understand that you've got everybody up to date and current.
Fantastic. Kristian, do you want to jump in? You've got some stories that you want to dig into. Floor's yours.
Thank you. Tom, so it seems like there's some growing European sentiments of data sovereignty. This has even pushed a municipality in Germany, Schleswig-Holstein, and they've said they're done with Teams. Quite
good pronunciation. I'm glad that was you and not me.
I hope I got that right.
We'll get somebody writing in to correct us who it wasn't.
What do you think about this administration saying they're done with Teams? They kind of really want to focus about keeping the data on side. Is this a sign of a snowball, perhaps? Is this a European sentiment that's just getting sick of American technology, or do you think this is an isolated case?
Yeah, I mean, they used Teams in the headline because that grabbed it. It was more of a conversation around the like using a suite, and there's a couple of pieces here. One is data sovereignty. One is trusting a giant company from a different country. And obviously with world events as they are at the moment, there's conversations about, who's allies and how much do we trust on tech. I think that the reaction from Microsoft has been to kind of emphasize this idea of having sovereign clouds, or even having what they're calling M365 local, which appears to be a cloud rebranding of server products. So the idea that you could run dedicated instances of Exchange server, Skype server, because there's no Teams on server, and SharePoint server, to say we have sovereign clouds in region, but actually you could run your own isolated things still in Microsoft tech if you wanted to. We've had this before with various open source pushes in the EU, like we're all going to use open source, and invariably they find equal challenges on that side of the fence about support and manageability and training and everything else. So we'll see, but we're in interesting times in the world where I think certainly data sovereignty is a big conversation that all the cloud players need to acknowledge.
Excellent. Josh, I was wondering if I could bring you in. Do you think that we're going to see an exodus from Teams, or you think this is just a little murmur that we're currently witnessing?
I would say probably falls into, I don't know that I'd characterize it as quite a murmur, but it's maybe it's a bump in the road, right? As far as the longevity goes, Germany for quite a while has been very protective of data, and that's been a challenge in a number of feature sets. You talk about intelligent speaker for Microsoft Teams Rooms, you talk about other areas where the AI is going, and these tools are evolving to utilize that data. But then you've got this one country or a couple countries by themselves that aren't partaking because of that. As the technology continues to evolve, as it gets more adopted, as it becomes more deeply integrated into the way that daily life is lived as well as work life, I think that probably on a wider level, we'll see the countries where there's been more rigidity there. I think that that rigidness is going to soften a bit over time. I think that there's going to be more exceptions made when it comes to data, and there's just going to have to be exceptions made when it comes to these tools being used.
Okay, excellent. Well, you mentioned on-prem earlier with this Microsoft 365 local, Tom. I was wondering, with Microsoft rolling out subscription editions for the Premises Exchange and Skype for Business servers, is this the final nail in the coffin for traditional perpetual licenses, or are they forcing everyone to the cloud by making on-prem too expensive? What's your take?
Yeah, so it is essentially moving server products into a subscription pricing model, which is interesting. So that changes the way customers have to buy server, and they have to move to subscription model to stay in support. So these are still server products in the sense they don't have to be connected to the cloud. They are patch updated. Microsoft will continue to update them, but Microsoft are not, investing tons of new features and capabilities in this product. They're very much in a maintenance mode for those who need them. And the pricing has gone up both on the server products and on the CALs, the user licenses needed for the client surf as well. So the prices have gone up for these types of customers. They're not going to get new features very much. They're just going to get security patching. But if you're a customer that needs server or wants server, there is a theoretically forever option for you to stay on a server-based product that Microsoft will support and maintain.
Okay, excellent. Kevin, I was wondering if I could bring you in. Is this on-prem offering enough for people to actually use it, or do you think it's just kind of a pit stop before this cloud migration we're seeing?
Yeah, I think that this is a great discussion, and I think that it's great that you have, countries and, organizations pushing back and saying, hey, I think Josh brings up a good point that, okay, yeah, certain services and like AI works better in the cloud, and so you're willing to trade off some sharing of data. But I think to give good consideration to this is very, very complicated in terms of just with any platform, Microsoft or any of the platforms, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or any, understanding where your data is stored and where it's going is very complicated. I know, Tom, you and I did a survivability webinar recently, and just understanding that there are vendors that their whole point is you can run all of the workloads on your servers in your data center, and Microsoft has never been doing that. There is no Teams workload to run on your server, so you got to step down to Skype for Business, and that's a trade-off. And so I think that these are, if you're a multinational, these are important considerations, but you got to go really deep to figure out what's best for your organization. I think it's interesting that Microsoft continues to give you choice, but it's it's not an easy choice, right? Because there's trade-offs. So I think it's like most technology, do your analysis, figure out the options, and then choose not the perfect option, but what's best for your org.
Okay, excellent. Well, moving on to some more Teams updates. Teams has now got a health dashboard, so people can see the health of all their Teams users and kind of actively address that before it becomes a larger fire. Tom, what do you think? Is this a significant upgrade, and is this going to help IT leaders with their giant perpetual headache?
IT is really the thing that's interesting. There is Microsoft are after this Teams have been around for years and years and years, but now it's like actually there's these huge estates of different client versions. And we mentioned earlier about Microsoft really pushing people to stay up to date. A large proportion of support tickets that get to Microsoft end in user wasn't an old version. We've already fixed that. Make the user upgrade. So this client health dashboard and other work they're doing to things like remotely pulling client logs. And some remote call testing as well, are all around helping the IT service owners make sure people are updated, understand their estate, eventually kind of help pull logs and push updates and things. So yeah, it's great from an IT pro point of view to see Microsoft investing in that. And for people running teams, it will really help them understand their global state and catch any users that are stuck on old client versions.
Excellent. Kevin, what do you think about it? Has this been a long time coming, and do you reckon it's really going to help people in managing their team ecosphere?
Yeah, I love analytics and I love the idea of being proactive. The truth of the matter is there's a lot of third-party tools that have been filling this gap, and they do, synthetic transactions, or some people call them robots. Effectively, it's a little app making calls, or testing out different workloads, simulating what a user does. And that allows you to understand, you'll get as an admin, you get this notification from Microsoft. Some users may be impacted, and that's not super helpful. If you got lots of offices, you want to know which offices that I have are impacted. And so third-party tools have been doing, the synthetic transaction monitoring for a long time. I think it's great that maybe Microsoft is now including it as part of what Teams is going to do. I'm not sure that their third-party partners think it's great, but I am a huge believer in this proactive monitoring. So whether you get it first party through Microsoft or from a third party, if you're responsible for telling people whether they should go into the office or work from home because there's an issue at the office, these things make your life a lot easier.
So Teams Rooms gets an AI assistant. Microsoft just added the AI assistant to the Teams Room Pro portal. How much hand-holding do meeting rooms actually need? Is this just AI implemented wherever it should be?
More than you might think.
Well, Tom, maybe you want to jump in on this.
Yeah, so this is AI, obviously AI everywhere, right? AI coming into the Pro portal, which is the management interface for Teams Rooms and eventually all Teams devices. This is early days, so this is the ability to essentially query the documentation for how to do things and to make queries on your estate, like what's going on with certain rooms, how many versions of this do I have? But it's the beginning of a journey to have a proactive AI assistant that can potentially do things in the future for us, i.e. I can instruct it to upgrade these particular devices or change this particular configuration. So first rev is read only. But I'm really excited about the potential to have, particularly you think some of these states have like 1,000 rooms globally. They can get big. And I know Josh and Ryan are pretty close to this with their respective roles. So it'd be interesting to hear what they think about this journey.
Well, maybe we'll do that. Josh, what's your thoughts on it?
What Tom just mentioned, looking to the future of it, being excited about where it could go. You think about, because really, you would be surprised at how much you can need an assistant when it comes to managing rooms. Rooms can get thrown into disheveled messes if they're left to the vices of people in the rooms at times. So being able to know not just simple things like what's up and down, but being able to, at a large scale, say, I've got this number of 1,000 rooms, go through and apply this template or adjust these settings for rooms in this office. And the more granular you can get, the more you can interface with that assistant to say, I need you to do this for me at mass, at scale. I think that's where the real value comes in. Outside of that, right, there's not as much to get into when it comes to rooms, but when you can take something like that at scale and push those types of configurations, updates based on the go requirements, I think that will be huge in that respect.
Yeah, it gets exciting as we think about just this ability, as you say, Josh, for scale, but doing it in a much more efficient way and without the same level of training and expertise. So I think today there's a curve to get to a place that you've got the knowledge to be able to manage, and I think as organizations, estates are just growing and growing. I think this is useful today. Like I could go figure out what rooms haven't checked in, or how many rooms do we have with dual display, or things that I might have had to. I think these types of tools are fundamentally changing the way we interact from a reporting and analytics perspective. If I can just ask questions, I care a lot less about figuring out where this the user interface obviously becomes a lot less important. So I think there's value today around, I can ask it what has outdated firmware or versions, and but yeah, it gets a lot more interesting at moving forward when this can begin to take action either upon request or proactively, and make some pretty complex changes. But yeah, it's a big leverage tool moving forward, and just another way that Microsoft is showing some of their AI superpower, and kind of giving us little previews in different places as we begin to think about AI rolling into the room again, as it's doing, and some of the things that we've talked about previously as well, with things like facilitator and more to come in that world. But I think AI is fundamentally transforming the room world from both administration here to the experience.
Let's just jump on to security for a moment. One of my favorite topics, Tom. But there's a story that talks about Microsoft clamping down on their default policy to block third-party apps from accessing user data without explicit consent. Now, we've all heard the Cambridge Analytica Facebook nightmare, and I'm sure Microsoft don't want that to happen. But I kind of thought that they would have already had these consent and policies in place. Do you know much about this story? What do you think?
I wrote about this on the newsletter, and it got quite a few replies. It's quite interesting timing. So to level set what this is Microsoft changing a default policy. They did already have the policy, but the policy that a individual user can sign up to a third-party app and grant it access to their files and or their calendar and or their email. So think about when you sign up for something like Calendly, for example. You would go in, you would sign up with your 365 account. You as a user could say by default, I grant that app to have access to my calendar. I think there's some compelling events that have rushed this change through or pushed this change through. Microsoft's working on this secure initiative to make everything secure by default. But also we've seen a plethora of these third-party AI agents sweep through organizations where individuals are granting them access to files and calendars and emails, and suddenly they're pulling data from meetings, scraping rosters, sending emails. I'm sure we've all been in meetings where you've seen multiples of these AI agents. So that's one thing. Also, if you're a bit more cynical, OpenAI just launched their version of grabbing data from Graph. That also requires these permissions. So that makes this a corporately controlled policy. But yeah, a really good, sensible default change. You can absolutely, as a user, still go to your admin and say, I want to enable these options. But it just stops people picking any random SaaS product and granting access to their files without any thought to data security, GDPR, data processing, all those kind of things. And certainly these AI meeting agents are becoming a real problem in enterprises where they're just popping up, grabbing data, and who knows what they're doing with it, privacy policy wise.
I'm glad you explained that, Tom. Kevin, you've got some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I'm going to argue both sides of the coin. So on the one hand, I think, right from Satya on down, Microsoft has invested a huge amount of, time and effort in trust, building trust with organizations. We talked about earlier how, Microsoft is a trusted vendor. And I think that the granularity and their focus on security is one of the reasons that they've have been and will continue to be a trusted vendor. The thing that I worry about is as the security, parameters, and as you get these pop-ups that asking you to grant these capabilities, it's fine for people like us that live in the ecosystem. We consume all of the information. If you're at a big organization, there's a whole security department, but it can be really, really confusing. And so what I worry about is when do people in smaller and medium organizations have security overload? And so the other side of this is, my organization created a Teams app, and you have to use the Teams app by default. There's permissions that are required, and it pops up. And getting people to understand if it's okay, and we needed the minimal permissions, and getting people to understand if it's okay to agree to this or not was complicated. So we even had a director at Microsoft who, Tom, you said, well, you just go ask the admin. That director who wanted to use this app didn't even know who their admin was to talk to, because as we talked about in the layoff situation, Microsoft is a huge organization. And so I think that it is, this is challenging. I think Microsoft's trying to do the right thing. But I think that, for smaller and medium-sized organizations, it may become overwhelming. And a case in point is shared channels and Teams. I was so excited when this came out, but getting the permissions right in the real world, there were few, if any, production organizations that could figure out the right permissions to get this feature to work, as well as it should. So trust is great, but obviously if security stops blocking, business productivity, that becomes a problem. So I see both sides, and I think it's complicated. I don't know what the other panel members think.
Let's talk AI agents. We can't get through any show or conversation nowadays without talking about AI agents. Tom, we've got our new Microsoft reasoning agents, researcher and analyst, and it's now GA, generally available. What does that mean, and what does that mean to the future?
This is really big. So these are, the whole AI world got really excited about reasoning quite a while ago now, and reasoning is just AI that can take multiple steps without a prompt each time. So rather than being prompt response, it can go off and kind of ask itself questions and ratify things between itself. That, as is always with M365 Copilot, it kind of comes to OpenAI first, then it gets into Microsoft and gets baked into the M365 product. So now customers of M365 Copilot have access to that. And it's very much like the reasoning models you will see in OpenAI or in Gemini. You can put in a query, it will go and do multiple internet searches, take multiple turns and produce a report for you at the end. It's a big step forward if you're kind of gathering lots of data together, and it massively helps you. And it's interesting to see Microsoft push that out to all M365 Copilot users, and there is a usage limit per user on that because it's quite computationally expensive. But if you haven't used a reasoning model and you've got M365 Copilot, go and check out, particularly Researcher. Analyst Agent is a bit more bespoke. It's about structuring data in new ways. So if you're a data person, it's more you. But Researcher, for anybody who wants to produce a first pass deep dive on a topic. And critically for M365 Copilot, the thing that they're bringing to the party is it can reason over your corporate data as well as internet data. So all the other tools by default would be reasoning over internet information, whereas this, for example, if you said produce a SWOT analysis on our product, it can go through data you can access about the product internally as well as externally on the internet.
Extremely powerful. Ryan?
I don't know if it's long-term clear, the monetization kind of strategy here, right, Tom, just around whether this is going to continue to be available just with a certain number of kind of monthly tokens, let's say for an M365 Copilot user, or if this is going to end up kind of billed separately. But yeah, this type of thing certainly adds, when you think about large deployments and finding value. And I think I'm just remembering when we were having conversations, a year ago, the idea was, could you end up with $30 of value, in the first 2 hours of the first day of the month? And I think for a lot of us, That's a yes now. That's like a lot more realistic than it felt back then. Certainly access to these types of tools have so much value. And it'll be an interesting balance just to see how much of that they keep in the core M365 license versus how much gets kind of peeled off based on what we know are such significant kind of server load and costs attached to these kind of more involved, deeper reasoning models.
Yeah, I think you're right. So Microsoft at the moment give 25 queries of either research or analyst per month per user for the M365 Copilot. It's like a $30 a user a month license. And all the other AI tools do similar things. They have some kind of rate limiting at their $20 typically on the commercial products, but they also all have a bigger plan. So Gemini has a $200 plan, OpenAI has a $200 plan, Claude has a $100 or $75 plan where they up that limit. We have no equivalent on the Microsoft 365 Copilot side. So I think your point is really good, Ryan. Like I would smash through, in fact, I will smash through 25 research uses probably in the first week or couple of weeks. If I want to pay extra at the moment, there is no model for that for me. So I expect we'll see some kind of pay-as-you-go model. I'd love to see Microsoft level out the usage over multiple licenses. Like if I'm Barclays and I bought 100,000 licenses, not all 100,000 users are going to be using 25 turns. So maybe I get some kind of prorated capability back. But these are computationally very expensive, and there's some kind of averaging Microsoft do to bake that saving or non-spend in. So yeah, interesting question, Ryan. I think we'll see something probably in pay-as-you-go for a heavy user potentially.
Interesting stuff. And the last news story for today, I'm going to go over to Kevin. Copilot's gone real time. Kevin, tell us more. I mean, what does that actually mean?
Well, real-time voice, right? So this is now the ability to have a voice conversation. You talk to Copilot and it talks back to you. And it does it, originally it was going to be available on iOS, so on your iPhones. But now they've said they're going to bring it to Android, to Mac OS, to the Windows desktop. And you can try it today on just the Copilot, either the Windows app or Copilot on your iOS device. That's not the M365 Copilot. That's kind of more your work one, but that's the announcement that's coming there. And I'll tell you, it was awesome because I just retried it today before the show. It's great. You can interrupt it now. The latency it's quick enough that it feels like a very natural conversation. It addresses me as Kevin. You can pick a voice that you like. And, what's coming very soon now is the ability to do this in your work context, right? So back to what Tom was talking about, how the research agent, the great thing is it can access all of your work documents. This means you can talk to M365 Copilot, have a discussion, and have it have access to your email, your calendar, all your work documents. And the great thing about voice interaction is, we've talked about all the changes to the UI that's come for Teams. People like it or hate it. Voice, you just talk to it. And so UI changes don't confuse people. They're just having a discussion. They're getting answers. So I'm very excited to have this roll out and to see how people take advantage of it. And I'd suggest if you're listening to this, go try it with, Copilot on your iOS phone or the Copilot app on Windows, because it's very, very impressive.
I think the voice aspect is kind of where we begin to actually remove real blockers. I feel like there's some leftover pain in people's minds about prompting, and prompting sounds so technical and so engineering, right? It doesn't sound like, oh, I could just pull up a search engine and start typing and discover through the way we can now with written to ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever. It being able to sit there and have a natural voice conversation to the non-technical folks out there, I think is going to click so much more and open up the gates of adoption so much wider. So I think that the voice element is really the cusp of where adoption and use cases begin to be really utilized and really adopted at a much wider scale.
Yeah, I think as well, it's interesting here. Microsoft initially planned to launch this just for mobile for M365 Copilot, but they've actually now said it's going to come in August. So Kevin's talking about the consumer Copilot you can try today, and you definitely should, because that'll give you a feel of what's coming. But when it comes in M365 Copilot, you'll be able to ask it questions about your emails, your calendar, because it has that data access.
Right.
So I'm really excited about the potential to have this, AI assistant in the car scenario where you can say what's coming up in my day, and it can actually talk back to you.
And I think, for me, Tom, it really for the first time, like sometimes I treat Copilot like an assistant, right? Because they say people have more success when you treat it as an assistant as opposed to a tool, but still I kind of treat it like a tool when I'm typing. But having that discussion, I think, to your point, Josh, that breaks down that barrier, and it really just feels like you're talking to, an informed colleague, and it just flows much better. And I think, people will get a lot more value out of it, the people that have been reticent to try some of the Copilot capabilities.
And it really begins as we think about this concept of digital coworkers and that side, and having an identity and having a voice is really important in that long-term conversation as well.
It's amazing. And for anyone confused by Copilot and which one to click, we'll put some links down below so you can follow through and demo it yourself. But very exciting. I'm going to hand over to Kristian and Tom for the events piece, and then we'll sign off. Kristian.
So obviously exciting stuff coming up with Copilot, but I was wondering, have you got any good events to tell us about, Tom? I know summer can have a bit of a lull, but I know you're the man to go to hear what's good.
Yeah, so not much in person coming up immediately, but lots of online stuff. So we have our usual Microsoft Teams devices Ask Us Anything on the 16th of July. So there's an APAC friendly time and a US Europe friendly time for that. We also have as I mentioned earlier in the show, the Microsoft Partner Kickoff. So this is for partners, Microsoft partners specifically, but 22nd of July, lots of online content across all the product groups around where their focus is, where the funding is, what they want partners to be doing. So next month we'll come back on the show and talk about what we found out on the 22nd. And then a little bit further out, we have our Copilot Fireside Chat on the 31st of July. And that we have a real focus on what's going on in M365 Copilot. And actually that's going to be a bit more about Agentic and Copilot Studio. And the next in-person that is going to be a big one for us is UC Expo, which is 1st and 2nd of October. So July and August, all virtual. And then we get back to it in kind of September, October time for the in-persons.
Excellent. A lot to look forward to.
And that's it for this month's Microsoft Teams news show. Huge thanks to Tom and the rest of the panel for your expert insights. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. If you found this update valuable, don't forget to like, share, or comment. We really appreciate your support. Now, we'll be back again next month with more Teams news, ecosystem updates, and the stories shaping the future of workplace collaboration. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.